The sun had barely crested the 7 hills of Rome when Lucius Festus awoke, his silken sheets clinging to his bronze skin like a lover reluctant to part. His villa, perched on the Esquiline hill, hummed with the quiet anticipation of a day that promised both splendor and chaos. Lucius was no ordinary Roman. He was the city's most celebrated orgy planner, a maestro of hedonism, whose name was whispered in the marble halls of senators and the smoky taverns of the Suburra alike. To the elite, he was a purveyor of pleasure, a sculptor of nights that would be recounted for generations. To the envious, he was a glorified panderer, a man who profited from the basest desires of Rome's upper crust. To Lucius himself, he was an artist, and tonight's grand bacchanal at the villa of Senator Gaius Marcellus would be his masterpiece. Lucius rose, his bare feet padding across the cool mosaic floor, depicting Bacchus in a revelry of grapevines and satyrs. He donned a tunic of Tyrian purple, a hue reserved for those who could afford to flaunt their wealth, and adjusted the gold fibula pinning his cloak. His reflection in a polished bronze mirror revealed a man in his early 30s, with sharp cheekbones, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes that sparkled with a mix of cunning and charm. "Another day, another denarius," he muttered, though the truth was he lived for the thrill of orchestrating Rome's most infamous gatherings. The morning air was crisp as he stepped into the atrium, where his household was already abuzz. Slaves scurried about, polishing silver, arranging flowers, and carrying amphorae of Falernian wine to the carts that would transport them to Marcellus's estate. At the center of it all stood Aemilia, Lucius's trusted freedwoman and assistant, her stylus poised over a wax tablet as she barked orders with the precision of a centurion. "Careful with those peacock feathers," she snapped at a young slave who nearly toppled a crate of delicate plumage. "They cost more than your life's worth." Lucius approached, his grin disarming. "Aemilia, my dove, must you terrify the help before the sun is fully risen?" She turned, her dark eyes narrowing but softened by a smirk. "Someone must ensure your vision isn't ruined by clumsy hands, Lucius. The senator expects perfection, and I'll not have us look like plebeian peddlers. Perfection is my domain," Lucius replied, plucking a rose from a nearby arrangement and tucking it behind her ear. "But I trust you to make it manifest. Now, what's the state of affairs?" Aemilia consulted her tablet, her voice brisk. "The musicians are confirmed, flutists, lyre players, and that Nubian drummer you insisted on. The cooks are preparing dormice in honey, stuffed sow's udders, and enough oysters to sate Neptune himself. The dancers from Alexandria arrived last night, though one claims she's ill, likely a ploy for more coin. The wine is loaded, the garlands woven, and the silks for the triclinium are en route. But," she paused, her tone darkening, "there's trouble with the exotic beasts." Lucius's brow furrowed. "The panthers, don't tell me they've escaped again." "Worse," Aemilia said. "The merchant swears he delivered 2, but only one is in the cage. The other is missing." Lucius groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. A missing panther was not the auspicious start he'd hoped for. Senator Marcellus had specifically requested savage elegance for tonight's spectacle, and a single panther was decidedly less elegant than a pair. "Send word to the merchant," he said. "If he doesn't find that beast by noon, I'll have him thrown into the cage instead." Aemilia nodded, scribbling a note, and the guest list. Marcellus added 3 more senators at the last moment, and there's a rumor that the emperor's cousin, Drusus, might attend. Lucius's heart quickened. Drusus's presence would elevate the event from mere decadence to a political statement. It also meant scrutiny, and Lucius knew better than most that in Rome, pleasure and power were 2 sides of the same denarius. "Double the guards," he instructed, "and ensure the wine is diluted for Drusus. He's notorious for spilling secrets when drunk." As Aemilia hurried off, Lucius turned his attention to the day's first task, a meeting with Marcellus himself.
The senator's villa was a sprawling complex on the Palatine, its frescoed walls and gilded columns a testament to his wealth and ambition. Lucius arrived by litter, carried by 4 burly slaves, and was ushered into the tablinum, where Marcellus reclined on a couch, dictating to a scribe. "Lucius Festus," Marcellus boomed, his voice as robust as his frame, "the man who makes gods jealous with his revels, tell me, will tonight outshine the feast of Sulla's triumph?" Lucius bowed, his smile practiced. "Sulla's triumph was but a shadow compared to what I have planned. Senate, picture this, a triclinium draped in silks, the color of twilight, dancers whose movements rival the muses, and a finale that will leave every guest breathless."
Marcellus's eyes gleamed. "Good. I want my rivals green with envy, and my allies begging for invitations to the next." But he leaned forward, his tone lowering. I hear there's a problem with my panthers." Lucius cursed inwardly but kept his composure. A minor hiccup. "Senator, by tonight you'll have your pair, stalking through the gardens like guardians of Bacchus himself." "See that I do," Marcellus said, waving him off. And Lucius, "No mistakes. My enemies are watching." The warning lingered as Lucius departed, his mind racing. A missing panther, a potential imperial guest, and the ever-present threat of Rome's cutthroat politics. This was no ordinary day. As he stepped back into the sunlight, he felt the weight of the city's expectations on his shoulders. But Lucius Festus thrived under pressure. Tonight, he would weave a tapestry of excess that would echo through the annals of Rome, or die trying. The Forum Barium buzzed with the chaotic symphony of Rome's commerce, a cacophony of shouting merchants, bleating livestock, and the clink of coins changing hands. Lucius Festus navigated the throng, his purple cloak a beacon amidst the drab tunics of traders and the dust-stained togas of haggling patricians. The morning sun beat down, turning the cobblestones into a furnace, but Lucius moved with purpose, his mind fixed on one goal: finding the missing panther. Before Senator Marcellus's orgy descended into farce, a single beast would not suffice for the savage elegance he had promised, and failure was not an option in a city where reputation was as fragile as a glass goblet. His litter had been left at the edge of the market, too cumbersome for the narrow alleys choked with stalls. Flanked by 2 burly slaves, Decimus and Brutus, Lucius wove through the crowd, his senses assaulted by the mingled scents of roasting meat, exotic spices, and the less pleasant odor of unwashed bodies. The Forum Barium was Rome's beating heart for trade in beasts and luxuries, a place where one could buy anything from a Parthian stallion to a pearl from the Red Sea. But somewhere in this labyrinth, Lucius knew, was Vedius, the beast trader who had delivered 1 panther instead of 2. "Keep your eyes sharp," Lucius instructed Decimus, whose scarred face and broad shoulders deterred pickpockets. "Vedius is slipperier than an eel in olive oil. He'll try to vanish the moment he sees us." Brutus, younger and less seasoned, clutched a cudgel nervously. "What if the panther's already sold, master, or eaten someone?" Lucius shot him a wry glance. "Then we'll have a bigger problem than Marcellus's displeasure. But Vedius wouldn't dare sell my beast. He knows I'd have his hide tacked to the Senate's door." And he pressed deeper into the market, past stalls laden with cages of squawking parrots, hissing snakes, and a mournful-looking ostrich that eyed Lucius as if pleading for rescue. Merchants called out their wares: silks from Ceres, amber from the Baltic, and dubious phoenix feathers that looked suspiciously like dyed chicken plumes. Lucius ignored them, his gaze scanning for Vedius's telltale red awning, a garish marker in the sea of canvas. At last, he spotted it, tucked between a fishmonger's stall and a vendor hawking dubious love potions. Vedius stood beneath the awning, a wiry man with a weasel's grin, gesticulating wildly to a cluster of prospective buyers. A caged leopard snarled at his feet, its golden eyes glinting with menace. Lucius's heart sank. Leopard, not panther. But he plastered on a charming smile and approached. "Vedius, my friend," Lucius called,
his voice honeyed but edged with steel. "A word, if you please." The trader's grin faltered, his eyes darting like a cornered rat's. "Lucius Festus, what an honor." "I was just sparing me the cost of a second panther, it seems," Lucius interrupted, stepping close enough to smell the cheap wine on Verdius's breath. "Where is—" Verdius's hands fluttered, a poor attempt at innocence. "A misunderstanding. Surely, I delivered both beasts to your men last night. If one's gone astray, it's not my fault," Decimus growled, his hand tightening on his cudgel, but Lucius raised a hand to stay him. "A misunderstanding," he echoed, his tone dangerously soft. "Then you won't mind helping me find it? Or perhaps you'd prefer to explain to Senator Marcellus why his orgy lacks its centerpiece." The crowd around them quieted, sensing drama. Verdius swallowed, his bravado crumbling. "There's no need for that," he muttered. "I heard a rumor. The beast might have been taken to the Subura. A buyer there, they say, pays well for exotic pets. A buyer there, they say, pays well for exotic pets. The Subura." Lucius's stomach churned. The Subura was Rome's underbelly, a warren of brothels, taverns, and cutthroats where even the city watch tread lightly. Tracking a panther there would be like chasing a shadow in a storm. "Who's the buyer?"
Vibius hesitated, then leaned in, his voice a whisper. "They call him the Jackal. Runs a gambling den near the Cloaca Maxima. That's all I know. I swear." Lucius's mind raced. The Jackal was a name whispered in dark corners, a shadowy figure who dealt in more than dice and wine. If the panther was in his hands, retrieving it would be no simple task. But before he could press Vibius further, a cloaked figure emerged from the crowd, their face obscured by a hood. The figure's voice was low, rasping, and unmistakably deliberate. "Lucius Festus," they said, "beware the one who feasts tonight. A serpent lies among the roses." Lucius froze, the cryptic warning sending a chill down his spine. He turned to face the speaker, but they were already melting back into the throng, leaving only the echo of their words. An augur, perhaps, or a spy playing at prophecy. In Rome, the two were often indistinguishable. "Master," Brutus asked, his cudgel raised, as if to pursue. "Let them go," Lucius said, though his jaw tightened. "We have bigger beasts to hunt." He turned back to Vibius, who was edging toward a stack of crates, clearly hoping to slip away. "Not so fast," Lucius snapped, grabbing the trader's arm. "You're coming with us to the Subura. If this Jackal has my panther, you'll help me get it back, or I'll feed you to the one we have." Vibius paled but nodded, his protests dying in his throat. As they set off toward the Subura, Lucius's mind churned with questions. Who was the cloaked figure, and what did their warning mean? Was the missing panther a mere accident, or part of a larger scheme to sabotage Marcellus's orgy? And how did the Jackal fit into it all? The market's clamor faded behind him, replaced by the looming shadow of Rome's darker streets. Lucius adjusted his cloak, his charm masking a growing unease. This was no longer just about a party. It was about survival in a city where pleasure was a battlefield. The sun was climbing toward its zenith as Lucius Festus's litter swayed back toward his Esquiline villa. The morning's chaos in the Forum Boarium still buzzing in his mind like a swarm of agitated bees. The cryptic warning from the cloaked figure, "A serpent lies among the roses," gnawed at him, its meaning as elusive as the missing panther. Vibius, the sniveling beast trader, had been left under Decimus's watchful eye with strict orders to arrange a meeting with the Jackal in the Subura by afternoon. For now, Lucius had to focus on the preparations for Senator Marcellus's orgy, where every detail, from the flicker of a lamp to the curve of a dancer's hip, had to be flawless. In Rome, perfection was not just expected, it was demanded. The villa's courtyard was a flurry of activity when Lucius arrived. Slaves darted about, balancing trays of glazed figs and amphorae of spiced wine, while Amelia, his indiscernible freedwoman,
stood like a general amidst the chaos, her wax tablet a shield against disorder. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine garlands and roasting meat, a prelude to the decadence to come. Lucius's eyes, however, were drawn to the peristyle, where the Alexandrian dancers were rehearsing under the watchful gaze of their choreographer, a wiry Greek named Phaedrus. The dancers moved like liquid silk, their bodies swaying to the haunting notes of a flute, their diaphanous veils catching the sunlight in shimmering waves. They were the centerpiece of tonight's entertainment, their performance meant to evoke the mysteries of Isis and the allure of the Nile. But one dancer stood out, not for her grace, but for her absence. Nefret, the troupe star, who had claimed illness that morning, was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Nefret?" Lucius asked, striding toward Phaedrus, who was clapping out a rhythm with exaggerated exasperation. Phaedrus rolled his eyes, his accent thick with disdain. "The divine Nefret deigns not to grace us with her presence. She's in your tablinum, Lucius, demanding an audience. Says her condition requires your personal attention." Lucius's lips twitched into a wry smile. He knew Nefret's type, talented, ambitious, and cunning enough to turn a feigned cough into a bid for power. "Keep the others on task," he told Phaedrus. "I'll handle our ailing star." The tablinum, Lucius's private office, was a sanctuary of order amidst the villa's frenzy. Scrolls lined the walls, detailing past events, guest lists, and menus that had cemented his reputation. Nefret reclined on a cushioned bench, her dark hair cascading over a linen robe that clung to her curves with deliberate precision. Her kohl-rimmed eyes flicked up as Lucius entered. Her expression a calculated blend of fragility and allure. "Lucius," she purred, her voice like honey poured over gravel. "I feared you'd forgotten me." "Impossible," Lucius replied, leaning against his desk with a disarming grin. "Rome itself would pause to mourn your absence, but Amelia tells me you're unwell. Shall I summon a physician, or is this ailment negotiable?"
Nefret rose, her movements slow and deliberate, closing the distance between them. "My ailment is one of ambition," she said, her fingers brushing his arm. "I tire of sharing the stage with lesser dancers. Give me a solo performance tonight, Lucius, and I'll ensure every senator in attendance dreams me for weeks." Lucius chuckled, stepping back to maintain his composure. Nefret was a master of seduction, but he was no novice. "A solo, you say, bold, but risky. The guests expect a spectacle, not a single star outshining the constellation." Her eyes narrowed, but her smile remained. "Then make me the brightest star. I know things, Lucius, secrets that could make or break your evening. Give me what I want, and I'll share them." His pulse quickened. Secrets in Rome were currency, and Nefret's confidence suggested she held something valuable. "Speak plainly," he said, his tone sharpening. "What do you know?" Nefret leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear. "One of your suppliers, a wine merchant, I believe, has been bribed to taint the Falernian. Not enough to kill, but enough to loosen tongues. Someone wants Marcellus's guests to spill their secrets, perhaps to ruin him." Lucius's mind raced. A tainted wine supply could turn the orgy into a disaster, exposing Marcellus to ridicule or worse. The augur's warning echoed in his head. A serpent lies among the roses. Was this the betrayal? Who's behind it? He demanded. Nefret shrugged, her smile coy. "That, I'll tell you after my solo is secured." Lucius weighed his options. Denying Nefret risked her silence, or worse, her complicity in the plot. Granting her demand might disrupt the carefully balanced performance, but it could buy her loyalty and the information he needed. "Very well," he said at last. "A solo, but it must fit the theme. Work with Phaedrus to weave it into the act. Betray me, Nefret, and you'll find Alexandria a distant memory." Her laughter was light,
victorious. You won't regret this, Lucius. As she sashayed out, Lucius summoned Emilia, who appeared with her usual efficiency. Check the wine, he instructed, keeping his voice low. Every amphora, every cask. If there's truth to Nefret's claim, we need to find the tainted batch before it reaches Marcellus's villa. Emilia's brow arched, but she nodded. And a dancer, you trust her about as far as I can throw a panther, Lucius replied, but she's given us a lead. Send word to our contacts in the Suburra. Find out if the jackal's involved in this wine business, and keep an eye on Nefret. She's playing a game, and I intend to win it. As Emilia departed, Lucius glanced at the scrolls on his desk, each a piece of the intricate puzzle that was tonight's orgy. Missing panther, the augur's warning, and now a potential sabotage plot. His day was unraveling faster than a poorly woven toga, but Lucius Festus was no stranger to chaos. He thrived in it, sculpting order from the raw marble of Rome's excess. With the sun now high, he steeled himself for the next challenge, knowing that in this city, every rose hid a serpent, and every pleasure came with a price. The midday sun bathed the Palatine Hill in a golden haze as Lucius Festus's litter swayed through the bustling streets toward Senator Marcellus's grand villa. The morning's events, the missing panther, the augur's cryptic warning, and Nefret's troubling revelation about tainted wine clung to Lucius like the dust of the Forum Boarium. His mind churned, piecing together the threads of what was shaping up to be a far more perilous day than he'd anticipated. Yet, as he approached the senator's estate, he donned his mask of effortless charm, for in Rome, appearances were as vital as air. The villa's atrium was a marvel of opulence, its marble columns veined with green and gold, its central pool reflecting frescoes of nymphs and satyrs in mid-revel. Slaves bustled about, polishing silver ewers and arranging garlands of roses and ivy, their movements a silent ballet orchestrated for tonight's orgy. Lucius was ushered past the main hall to a secluded garden, where Claudia, the senator's wife, awaited him beneath a pergola draped with grapevines. She was a vision in a stola of crimson silk, her auburn hair piled high with pearl pins, her eyes sharp as a gladius despite the languid pose she struck on a cushioned bench. Lucius Festus, Claudia purred, her voice smooth but laced with authority. Rome's maestro of merriment, I trust you're ready to make tonight unforgettable. Lucius bowed, his smile practiced. Marsug, unforgettable is my trade, Lady Claudia. The dancers are rehearsing, the wine is being inspected, and the panthers, well, one is secured, and the other will be by dusk. Liz, her lips curved, but her gaze was appraising, like a merchant weighing a dubious coin. Good, my husband's ambitions rest on this night, but I have a special request, one that requires your particular finesse.
Lucius's instincts prickled. Claudia was no mere patrician's wife. She was a player in Rome's political chessboard. Her influence whispered in the ears of senators and magistrates. Name it, he said, keeping his tone light. My art is at your service. Claudia rose, her movements deliberate as she paced the garden, her fingers trailing along the vines. There's a guest tonight, Senator Publius Varro. He's a stubborn old mule, loyal to the emperor's faction, and blocking Gaius's proposal for new trade routes to Parthia. New trade routes to Parthia. I need him persuaded, Lucius, not with words, he's deaf to those, but with indulgence. Lucius arched a brow. You wish me to sway a senator with wine and dancers, a tall order, even for me. Not just wine and dancers, Claudia said, turning to face him, her eyes glinting. Varro has a weakness for rare pleasures, exotic ones. I've heard he's particularly fond of Eastern spices and the company of those skilled in their use. Arrange a private moment for him, something discreet, but intoxicating. Make him feel like a god, and he'll be clay in Gaius's hands by dawn. Lucius's mind raced. Orchestrating a private encounter was within his expertise, but it was a delicate dance. Varro's favor
could secure Marcellus's trade deal, but if mishandled, it could spark scandal, or worse, accusations of bribery. And with the augur's warning, and Nefret's claim of tainted wine still unresolved, Lucius felt the threads of his carefully woven plans fraying. "I can arrange it," he said cautiously, "but I'll need details. Who's to be his companion, and what exactly does intoxicating entail?" Claudia's smile was enigmatic. "Leave the companion to me. I have someone in mind, a certain freedwoman from Palmyra, skilled in ways that would make Venus blush. As for intoxicating, let's just say Varro's tastes lean toward the aromatic saffron, myrrh, perhaps a touch of opium smoke. Nothing lethal, of course, just enough to loosen his inhibitions." Lucius suppressed a grimace. Opium was a dangerous game, banned in public gatherings since the days of Nero's excesses, but refusing Claudia was not an option. Her influence could make or break his career. "It will be done," he said, his voice steady, "but I'll need assurances. If Varro's indiscretions are traced back to me, my reputation will remain spotless." Claudia interrupted, stepping closer, her perfume a heady mix of rose and amber. "Succeed, Lucius, and you'll have more than Gaius's gratitude. I reward loyalty generously." Her hand brushed his, lingering just long enough to blur the line between promise and threat. Lucius held her gaze, his charm a shield against her intensity. "Then consider Varro," persuaded, "my lady, but I'll need access to your household stores for the spices, and a private chamber for the encounter." "Granted," Claudia said, waving a hand, "my steward will see to it. But Lucius," she added, her voice dropping, "be discreet. My husband's enemies are watching, and they'd love nothing more than to see this night end in ruin." The echo of the augur's warning, "A serpent lies among the roses," resounded in Lucius's mind. Was Claudia the serpent, or merely another player in a larger game? He bowed again, excusing himself with a flourish, but as he stepped back into the villa's bustling halls, his thoughts were a tangle of suspicion: the tainted wine, the missing panther, and now this clandestine mission. Each was a piece of a puzzle he couldn't yet solve. As he boarded his litter to return to his villa, Lucius issued orders to his slaves. "Send word to Amelia," he told Decimus. "Have her double-check the wine with extra care, taste it herself if she must, and find out if this Palmyran freedwoman is already in Rome. I want no surprises tonight." Decimus nodded, his scarred face impassive. "And the panther, master, any word from Vivius?" "Not yet," Lucius said, his jaw tightening. "But if he doesn't deliver by afternoon, I'll have him chasing that beast through the Subura himself." As the litter swayed through Rome's crowded streets, Lucius leaned back, his fingers drumming against the cushioned seat. Claudia's request was a dangerous gambit, one that could elevate his status or drag him into the mire of political intrigue. With the orgy only hours away, he felt the weight of Rome's expectations pressing harder. But Lucius Festus was a master of turning chaos into triumph. He would weave Claudia's scheme into his tapestry of excess, outwit the serpents lurking in the roses, and ensure that tonight's revelry would be the talk of the eternal city or die trying. The Subura was Rome's shadow, a labyrinth of narrow alleys, where the scent of cheap wine, sweat, and desperation clung to the air like damp wool. As Lucius Festus stepped from his litter at the edge of this teeming district, the afternoon sun cast long, jagged shadows across the cracked cobblestones.
The missing panther, vital to Senator Marcellus's orgy, had been traced here by Vibius's reluctant admission to a shadowy figure known as the jackal. Lucius's purple cloak, a mark of wealth in the Forum, felt like a target now, drawing sidelong glances from loiterers and pickpockets. He tightened his grip on the dagger, hidden beneath his tunic, a precaution he rarely needed, but was glad for today. Decimus, his scarred bodyguard, flanked him, his cudgel swinging like a pendulum, while Brutus trailed nervously, clutching a sack of denarii to bribe or barter for information. Vibius, the beast trader, shuffled behind, his weasel-like face pale with dread. "This is madness, Lucius," he muttered, dodging a pile of refuse. "The jackal's den is no place for a man like you. If the panther's here, it's as good as gone." "Silence," Lucius snapped, his voice low but sharp. "You lost the beast, Vibius. You'll help find it, or I'll ensure the only cage you see is in the arena." The Sabura pulsed with life, chaotic and unyielding. Hawkers shouted over the din of clanging pots and drunken laughter, offering everything from stale bread to questionable charms. A woman in a tattered stola winked at Lucius from a doorway, while a gang of urchins darted past, one snatching at Brutus's sack before Decimus's glare sent them scattering. Lucius's senses were on edge, the augur's warning, "A serpent lies among the roses," echoing alongside Nefret's claim of tainted wine and Claudia's dangerous request to sway Senator Varro. The orgy was hours away, and each moment in this cesspool was a gamble. Their destination was a gambling den near the Cloaca Maxima, the great sewer whose stench permeated the air. Vibius led them through a warren of alleys, each narrower and filthier than the last, until they reached a low, unmarked door beneath a sagging awning. A hulking figure lounged outside, his arms crossed, a scar bisecting his face like a fault line. "We're here for the jackal," Lucius said, his tone smooth but firm. "I'm Lucius Festus, and I believe he has something of mine." The guard's eyes narrowed, but he jerked a thumb toward the door. "Inside, but watch your step, jackal. Don't take kindly to fancy types." The den was a dimly lit cave, its air thick with smoke and the tang of sour wine. Dice rattled across tables, and men hunched over games of knucklebones, their curses mingling with the laughter of courtiers. At the far end, a lean man with a predator's grin sat on a raised chair, his fingers adorned with rings that glinted like stars. The jackal. Lucius approached, his charm a polished weapon. "Jackal, I presume. I'm here about a panther, black as night, meant for Senator Marcellus's revels. I'm told it found its way to you." The jackal's grin widened, revealing a gold tooth. "Lucius Festus, the orgy king, heard of you. Fine cloak, shame it'll get dirty here." He leaned forward, his voice a rasp. "I got no panther, but if I did, what's it worth to you?" Lucius gestured to Brutus, who opened the sack of denarii, letting the coins catch the lamplight, "enough to make your den shine brighter than the Senate. Name your price." The jackal's eyes gleamed, but before he could speak, a commotion erupted at a nearby table. A wiry youth, no older than 16, with matted hair and quick hands, was caught palming dice. The other players roared, one grabbing the youth's wrist. "Thief!" they shouted, drawing knives. Lucius saw an opportunity. He stepped forward, raising a "Gentlemen, let's not spill blood over dice. This lad owes me a debt. Let me handle him." The players hesitated, then backed off, swayed by Lucius's authority and Decimus's looming presence. The youth, eyes wide with surprise, was dragged to a corner by Lucius. "What's your name, boy?" he asked, his voice low. "Free, Caius," the youth muttered, his gaze defiant, but curious. "What do you want?" "Information," Lucius said. "You're quick, and you know this. Help me find my panther, and I'll pay your debt, and more." Caius's eyes flicked to the jackal, then back to Lucius. "All right, but the jackal's lying. He's got your beast in a cellar below." "Not just that, he's being paid to keep it from you. Someone wants your party to flop." Lucius's pulse quickened. "Who?" Caius hesitated, then whispered, "Heard a name, Rufus Gallus. Senator's man, hates Marcellus. That's all I know." Rufus Gallus. Lucius knew the name. A rival senator with a grudge against Marcellus over a failed alliance. The pieces were falling into place. The missing panther, the tainted wine, the augur's warning, all pointed to a plot to humiliate Marcellus. "Take me to the cellar," Lucius said. Caius led them through a back passage, past barrels of wine and stacks of crates, to a trapdoor. Decimus pried it open, revealing a dark stairwell. The growl that echoed up confirmed the panther's presence. But as they descended, a shout rang out. The jackal's men, alerted to their intrusion, a scuffle broke out, Decimus's cudgel meeting flesh, while Caius darted through the fray, unlocking a cage. The panther, sleek and furious, leapt free, its roar scattering the attackers. "Run!" Caius yelled, and Lucius didn't argue. They fled the den, the panther bounding ahead, its leash barely held by Brutus. The Sabura's streets blurred past as they raced back to the litter, the beast's presence drawing gasps and screams. Lucius's heart pounded, but he felt a thrill. This was chaos he could mold. Back at the litter, Lucius tossed Caius a purse of coins. "You've earned this. Stick with me tonight, and there's more." Caius grinned, pocketing the denarii. "You're mad, Festus, but I like it." As the litter lurched toward Marcellus's villa, the panther secured in a cart behind, Lucius's mind churned. Rufus Gallus's involvement meant the orgy was a battleground, and the night was far from one. With Claudia's scheme, Nefret's ambitions, and the tainted wine still looming, Lucius knew he was walking a knife's edge. But he was Lucius Festus, and in Rome's game of pleasure and power, he played to win. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow over Senator Marcellus's villa, its marble facade gleaming like a polished jewel atop the Palatine hill. Lucius Festus stepped from his litter, the chaos of the Sabura still a vivid memory, the panther's growl echoing in his ears. Both beasts were now secured in a reinforced cage in the villa's gardens, their sleek forms pacing restlessly under the watchful eyes of Decimus and a team of handlers. The thrill of retrieving the second panther had bolstered Lucius's confidence, but the weight of the day's challenges, Nefret's scheming, Claudia's clandestine mission, and the specter of Rufus Gallus's sabotage, pressed heavily on his shoulders. With only hours until the orgy began, every detail had to align, or his reputation would crumble like a poorly baked loaf. The villa's courtyard was a whirlwind of activity, a testament to Lucius's meticulous planning. Slaves draped silks, the color of twilight across the triclinium, their hues shimmering in the fading light. Cooks bustled in the kitchens, the air thick with the aromas of honey-glazed dormice, roasted peacock, and oysters steeped in garum. Garlands of roses and ivy cascaded from columns, their petals a vivid contrast to the marble floors. Yet, as Lucius surveyed the scene, a discordant note struck his ear, or rather, the absence of one. The rhythmic beat of the Nubian drummer, whose deep, primal cadence was to anchor the evening's dances, was missing. Lucius found Emilia near the triclinium, her wax tablet clutched like a shield as she directed slaves, arranging silver platters. "Emilia," he called, striding over, "where's the drummer? The Alexandrians need his rhythm for their final rehearsal." Emilia's face tightened, her stylus pausing mid-scratch. "Gone." Lucius vanished an hour ago. One moment he was tuning his drum, the next poof. The slaves saw nothing, and Phaedrus is tearing his hair out. Lucius's stomach sank. The Nubian drummer was no mere musician. His performance was meant to evoke the wild heart of distant lands, a key element of the savage elegance. Marcellus demanded. "Find him," he said, his voice low but urgent. "Search every corner of this villa, and check with Caius. He's got a nose for trouble." As Emilia nodded and hurried off, a new figure emerged from the triclinium, his toga pristine, and his smile as sharp as a freshly honed blade. Lucius recognized him instantly. Titus Flaccus, a rival planner, whose ostentatious feasts had long vied for Rome's favor. Titus was a peacock of a man, his hair oiled to a sheen, his fingers glittering with rings that screamed, "New money." "Lucius Festus," Titus boomed, his voice carrying over the bustle.
I heard Marcellus hired you for this little gathering. Pity I'd have made it truly spectacular. Lucius's smile was a masterpiece of restraint. Titus, what a surprise. Come to steal my secrets, or just to bask in my shadow. Titus laughed, but his eyes were cold. Marcellus invited me to observe. He's considering me for his next event. Seems he's not entirely convinced you can deliver. The words stung, but Lucius kept his composure. Observe all you like, Titus, but you'll find my work speaks louder than your boasts. Titus sauntered off, his laughter grating. Lucius's mind raced. Titus's presence was no coincidence. Was he linked to Rufus Gallus, the senator plotting against Marcellus, or was he merely an opportunist, waiting for Lucius to falter? The missing drummer, the tainted wine, the panther's theft, each could be a thread in a rival's scheme to undermine him.
Lucius pushed the thought aside and strode to the gardens, where the Alexandrian dancers were practicing without their rhythm. Nerfrit, now radiant, after securing her solo, moved with a grace that could silence a crowd, but the lack of drums left the performance flat. Phaedrus, the choreographer, was berating a flautist when Lucius approached. Phaedrus, we need a solution, Lucius said. No drummer, no impact. Can you rework the dance for lyres alone? Phaedrus's face twisted in horror. Lie alone. It's like serving garum without fish. The dance needs a heartbeat. Lucius, then find one. Lucius snapped, his patience thinning. Improvise, or I'll have you playing a tambourine in the Suburra. As Phaedrus scurried off, Caius, the young thief from the Suburra, slipped through the crowd, his matted hair and quick eyes marking him as an outsider. Found something, he whispered, pulling Lucius aside. Your drummer didn't vanish. He was paid to leave. Saw him sneaking out the back gate with a purse of coins. Looked like one of Titus's men. Handed it over. Lucius's jaw tightened. Titus, the rival's presence was no longer just an annoyance. It was a threat. Can you track the drummer? He asked. Caius grinned, his teeth flashing. For the right price, I can track a fly in a sandstorm. Lucius tossed him another purse. Find him, bring him back, or find me someone who can match his skill. And Caius, watch Titus. If he's sabotaging me, I want proof. As Caius darted off, Lucius turned his attention to the wine, the other looming threat. Emilia returned. Emilia returned, her expression grim. The wine's clean so far, she said, but one cask had a seal tampered with. I've isolated it, but we're running out of time to check every amphora. Do it anyway, Lucius said, and post extra guards around the store. If Titus or Gallus is behind this, they'll try again. The villa hummed with anticipation as the first guests' litters appeared on the horizon, their torches flickering like stars against the dusk. Lucius felt the weight of the night pressing down, each task a thread in a tapestry that could unravel with one wrong move. The drummer's absence, Titus's scheming, Claudia's secret mission, and the specter of Gallus's plot, each was a challenge. But Lucius was no stranger to chaos. He adjusted his cloak, his charm, a polished armor, and prepared to face the evening. The orgy was taking shape, but in Rome, every feast was a battlefield, and Lucius Festus was ready to fight. The twilight sky over Senator Marcellus's villa glowed with hues of amber and violet, a fitting backdrop for the orgy that loomed mere hours away. Lucius Festus stood in the triclinium, his keen eyes sweeping over the final preparation. Silks shimmered like liquid starlight, garlands of roses and ivy perfumed the air, and the two panthers, now safely caged in the garden, added a primal edge to the opulence. Yet, the absence of the Nubian drummer gnawed at Lucius, a discordant note in his carefully orchestrated symphony. Caius, the young thief, was still scouring the Suburra for the musician or a replacement.
While Emilia's team had yet to confirm the wine's safety, Titus Flaccus's presence and Claudia's secretive mission to sway Senator Varro only heightened the tension, and now a new complication had arrived, unannounced and unwelcome. A commotion at the villa's entrance drew Lucius's attention. A litter, gilded and flanked by a dozen armed guards, had arrived far earlier than expected. Whispers rippled through the slaves. Drusius, the emperor's cousin. Lucius's heart quickened. Drusius's attendance could elevate the orgy to legendary status, but his presence was a double-edged sword. Known for his sharp wit and sharper tongue, Drusius was a man whose favor could open doors or whose displeasure could slam them shut. Lucius adjusted his purple cloak and strode to the atrium, where Drusius reclined on a cushioned litter, his lean frame draped in a toga edged with gold. His dark eyes, heavy with the weight of imperial blood, scanned the villa with a mix of amusement and disdain. Lucius Festus, he drawled, his voice carrying the lazy confidence of one born to power. I hear you're crafting a knight to rival Bacchus himself. I thought I'd see the preparations for myself. Lucius bowed, his smile as polished as the marble beneath his feet. An honor, Lord Drusius. The revels are nearly ready, silks to dazzle, dancers to enchant, and beasts to thrill. Would you care to inspect the arrangements? Drusius waved a hand, dismissing his guards, who retreated to the shadow. Walk with me, Festus. I care less for silks than for discretion. The word sent a chill down Lucius's spine, but he kept his expression neutral, guiding Drusius toward the gardens, where the panther's low growls provided a dramatic ambiance.
As they strolled past rose bushes and flickering lamps, Drusius' tone shifted, low and conspiratorial. Tell me, lucky Seerus, what do you know of loyalty in Rome? It's a coin spent too freely. Don't you think? Lucius's mind raced. The augur's warning. A serpent lies among the roses, echoing alongside Claudia's scheming and Titus's sabotage. Loyalty is a dance, he replied carefully. One must know the steps to avoid treading on toes. Drusius chuckled, but his eyes were sharp. Well said. But some in this city are dancing to a different tune. There's talk, whispers, really, of a plot against the emperor. Names like Rufus Gallus surface, tangled with others closer to the throne. Marcellus's orgy, I hear, is more than a feast. It's a stage for such whispers. Lucius's pulse quickened, but he kept his face a mask of calm. Rufus Gallus again. The Senator Caius had named in the Subura, linked to the panther's theft. If Drusius's hints were true, the orgy was a nexus of treason, and Lucius was caught in its web. Whispers are common in Rome, he said, sidestepping. My concern is the feast, not politics. The guests will find only pleasure here tonight. Drusius stopped, his gaze pierced. Don't play the fool, Festus. You're no mere planner. You're a man who sees the currents beneath the surface. If you hear anything tonight, anything untoward, you'd be wise to share it. The emperor rewards those who guard his interests. The weight of the request settled over Lucius like a leaden cloak. Spying for Drusius could protect him from the fallout of a failed orgy, but it would entangle him in imperial intrigue, a dangerous game for a man whose power lay in pleasure, not politics. I hear only the music of the lyres, Lucius hissed, his tone light but firm. But I'll keep my ears open, as always. Drusius nodded, satisfied for now, and resumed his stroll, commenting idly on the panther's ferocity. As they returned to the triclinium, Emilia approached, her expression taut. Lucius, she whispered, pulling him aside. Caius found the drummer, drunk in a Subura tavern, bribed by Titus's men. He's on his way back, but he's in no state to perform. And the wine, one cask was laced with a mild sedative. Just as Nefret warned, I've replaced it, but we're stretched thin guarding the rest. Lucius cursed,
Under his breath, Titus's sabotage was relentless, and the drummer's condition was a blow. Find a replacement drummer, he instructed. Caius knows the Sibura, have him scour the taverns for someone with skill, and double the guards on the wine. No one touches it without my approval. As Amelia hurried off, Lucius glanced at Drossis, who was now inspecting a tray of stuffed sows udders with feigned interest. The Emperor's cousin was a wild card, his hints of treason a shadow over the night. Lucius had to balance Claudia's mission to sway Varro, neutralize Titus's interference, and ensure the orgy dazzled all while avoiding the trap of a political conspiracy. The augur's words haunted him, each guest a potential serpent, each rose a hidden thorn. As the first stars appeared, signaling the guests' imminent arrival, Lucius steeled himself. The triclinium glowed, the dancers rehearsed without their drum, and the panthers paced, ready for their moment. Lucius Festus was no stranger to pressure, but tonight, the stakes were higher than ever. He would weave this chaos into a masterpiece, outwit the serpents, and emerge triumphant, or lose everything in the attempt. The stars glittered above Senator Marcellus's villa, their light rivaled by the glow of 100 lamps casting dancing shadows across the triclinium. Lucius Festus stood at the edge of the grand hall, his purple cloak a beacon of authority amidst the arriving guests. The orgy had begun, and the air thrummed with anticipation, scented with rose petals, myrrh, and the rich aroma of Falernian wine. Silks draped the walls like liquid twilight. The Alexandrian dancers swayed to the lilting notes of lyres, still lacking the Nubian drummer's pulse, and the two panthers, now leashed in the garden, added a thrilling edge to the night. Yet, beneath Lucius's polished smile, tension coiled like a serpent. Drossis' hints of treason, Claudia's mission to sway Senator Varro, and the lingering threat of tainted wine weighed heavily, while Titus Flaccus's smirking presence in the crowd stoked his suspicion. The guests, Rome's elite in their finest togas and stolas, reclined on cushioned couches, their laughter mingling with the clink of silver goblets. Senator Marcellus held court at the head of the triclinium, his robust frame draped in a toga edged with purple, his wife Claudia at his side, her crimson silk a vivid contrast to her calculating smile. Drossis, the Emperor's cousin, lounged nearby, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if searching for secrets. Senator Varro, the target of Claudia's scheme, was already deep in his cups, his ruddy face flushed with anticipation.
Lucius had arranged a private chamber with saffron and myrrh, as Claudia requested, and the Palmyrene freedwoman was poised to work her charms. So far, the night was a triumph, but Lucius knew better than to trust Rome's calm. As the dancers began their performance, their veils swirling like mist over the Nile, Lucius slipped through the crowd, ensuring every detail was flawless. Amelia, stationed near the wine stores, signaled that the latest checks had found no further tampering, but her tight expression betrayed her unease. Caius, the young thief, had returned with a substitute drummer, a wiry Ethiopian whose rapid beats were weaving into the dance, restoring its primal energy. Mefret, radiant in her solo, moved with a grace that silenced the room, her eyes locking briefly with Lucius's, a reminder of her earlier threat and promise. Then, a gasp shattered the revelry. A guest, a minor magistrate named Quintus Labeo, lurched from his couch, his goblet clattering to the floor. His face paled, his hands clutched his throat, and he collapsed, convulsing, as the crowd erupted in murmurs. Lucius's heart sank, the augur's warning. A serpent lies among the roses ringing in his ears. Poison. He moved swiftly, sangling Amelia to keep the guests calm, while he knelt beside Labeo, whose breathing was shallow but steady. "Fetch a physician," Lucius whispered to Brutus, who hovered nearby. "Discreetly, and get Caius. Tell him to watch the servers." As slaves carried Labeo to a side chamber, Lucius maintained his composure, addressing the crowd with a practiced laugh. "Too much wine.
My friends, let's not let our magistrate's enthusiasm dim the night. More music, more dance. The lyres struck up, and Nefret's performance resumed, drawing eyes away from the incident. But Lucius's mind raced. The wine had been checked. Had another cask been missed? Or was this a new sabotage, tied to Titus or Rufus Gallus? In the side chamber, the physician, a grizzled Greek named Hippocrates, examined Labeo. Not fatal, he muttered, sniffing the spilled wine from the goblet. A mild toxin, likely belladonna. He'll recover, but he'll be useless for hours. Lucius's jaw tightened. Belladonna was subtle, meant to incapacitate, not kill, a perfect tool for someone aiming to disrupt without drawing blood. Scanned the room, spotting Titus Flaccus near Marcellus, his smile too smug for innocence. But Lucius's earlier words about a plot against the emperor suggested a larger game. Was Labeo's collapse a warning, a distraction, or a move to discredit Marcellus? Caius slipped into the chamber, his eyes bright with news. One of the servers, he whispered, saw him swap Labeo's goblet with another. He's gone now, bolted out the back. Looked like one of Titus's men, but he was talking to someone else before he fled. Couldn't see who. Lucius cursed inwardly. Titus's involvement was almost certain, but the second figure hinted at a broader conspiracy. Find that server, he told Caius. Track him to the Subura if you must, and keep an eye on Titus. He's not here to admire my work. As Caius vanished into the crowd, Lucius returned to the triclinium, where the dancer's performance was reaching its climax. Nefret's solo ended with a flourish, earning roars of approval, but Lucius's eyes were on Varro, now being led to the private chamber by the Palmyran freedwoman. Claudia caught his gaze, her nod a silent command to ensure success. Lucius signaled a slave to light the myrrh burners, the heady scent wafting through the villa, but his focus was the poisoned guest, the missing server, and Drusius's talk of treason formed a knot he couldn't untangle. Not yet. Marcellus approached, his face flushed with wine but his voice steady. Well done, Festus, he boomed. The night's a triumph, despite our magistrate's indiscretion, but keep it flawless. My enemies are watching. Lucius bowed, hiding his unease. Flawless is my promise, Senator. As Marcellus returned to his guests, Lucius felt the weight of the night pressing harder. The orgy was in full swing, but danger lurked in every shadow. Titus's sabotage, Gallus's plot, and Drusius's scrutiny were threads in a tapestry of intrigue, and Lucius was at its center. With the Panther's finale approaching and Varro's seduction underway, he had to act swiftly to uncover the poisoner and protect the night, or risk losing everything in Rome's merciless game of power and pleasure. The triclinium of Senator Marcellus's villa pulsed with the heartbeat of decadence, a symphony of laughter, clinking goblets, and the sultry notes of lyres weaving through the haze of myrrh and wine. Lucius Festus moved through the orgy like a shadow, his purple cloak a flick of authority amidst the revelry. The Alexandrian dancers, led by Nefret's mesmerizing solo, had captivated the guests, their veils swirling like dreams spun from starlight. The panthers, leashed in the garden, growled softly, their presence a thrilling undercurrent.
Yet, beneath the surface of this triumph, danger coiled tighter. Quintus, Labeo's poisoning, Claudia's mission to sway Senator Varro, Drusus's whispers of treason, and Titus Flaccus's smug presence, all pointed to a conspiracy Lucius could no longer ignore. The augur's warning, "A serpent lies among the roses," felt like a prophecy unfolding before his eyes. As the dancers retreated to applause, Lucius scanned the room. Marcellus reclined at the head, his laughter booming, while Claudia's sharp eyes tracked Varro, now secluded in the private chamber with the Palmyran freedwoman, the air thick with saffron and opium smoke. Drusus, The emperor's cousin lounged nearby, his gaze flicking between guests, as if reading their secrets. Titus Flaccus hovered near a group of minor senators, his oily smile a constant thorn in Lucius's side. The poisoning of Labeo, now recovering in a side chamber, had been contained, but Caius's report of a fleeing server, tied to Titus, suggested more sabotage was afoot. Lucius's thoughts were interrupted by Emilia, who slipped through the crowd, her wax tablet tucked under her arm. "Lucius," she whispered, her voice taut. Caius found the server in the suburra dead, throat slit, purse gone, but he carried this. She handed him a small, sealed scroll, its wax stamped with a serpent coiled around a rose. Lucius's blood ran cold. The augur's symbol. He broke the seal, revealing a scrawled note. "The roses bloom, but the serpent strikes at midnight. Gallus will rise." The name of Rufus Gallus, the senator plotting against Marcellus, confirmed Caius's earlier tip from the suburra. The augur, whose cryptic warning had haunted Lucius all day, was no mere seer. They were a conspirator, feeding him half-truths to mask a deeper betrayal. "Where's Caius now?" Lucius asked, pocketing the scroll. "Watching the gates," Emilia replied. "He says a cloaked figure, likely the augur, was seen near the servants' entrance, speaking with one of Titus's men." Lucius's mind raced. The augur's betrayal was tied to Gallus, and Titus was likely their tool, orchestrating the poisoning and the drummer's absence to discredit Marcellus. Midnight was approaching, and if the note was true, another strike was imminent, perhaps another poisoning, or something worse, to ruin Marcellus and elevate Gallus's faction. Lucius had to act, but exposing the plot outright risked panic and his own entanglement in treason. He needed a distraction, something to shift the night's momentum and protect his patron without revealing his hand. He summoned Phaedrus, the choreographer, who was adjusting a dancer's veil. "Phaedrus," Lucius said, his voice low, "we need a spectacle now. Bring the dancers back, but make it bold, something to hold every eye, and signal the handlers to prepare the panthers for an early appearance." Phaedrus's eyes widened. "They're meant for the finale. It's risky. Do it," Lucius snapped, "and tell Nefret to weave her solo into a procession through the gardens. I want every guest mesmerized." As Phaedrus hurried off, Lucius moved to the wine stores, where Emilia's guards stood vigilant. "Check every goblet served from now on," he instructed. "If another guest falls, we're done for." The dancers returned, their performance a blaze of motion and color. Nefret, at their center like a goddess, descended from the heavens. The guests, already flushed with wine, roared their approval, their attention riveted. Lucius slipped through the crowd, his eyes searching for the cloaked augur. Near the servants' entrance, he spotted a hooded figure, their movements furtive, as they handed a vial to a server. One of Titus's men, unmistakable in his gaudy Lucius signaled Caius, who appeared like a ghost from the shadows. "That's our augur," Lucius whispered. "Follow them, don't let them out of your sight, and get that vial quietly." Caius nodded, vanishing into the throng, as the dancers led the guests to the gardens, where the panthers' cages gleamed under torchlight. The beasts' roars drew gasps, pulling all eyes to the spectacle. Lucius used the distraction to approach Titus, who stood near Marcellus, his smile smug as ever. "Enjoying the show, Titus?" Lucius asked, his tone deceptively light. Titus's eyes narrowed, sensing a trap. "A fine effort, Festus, but it lacks originality. Perhaps Marcellus should have hired me." "Perhaps," Lucius said, leaning closer. "But tell me, Titus, do you always pay your men to poison guests, or is that a special touch for tonight?" Titus's face paled, but he recovered quickly. "Careful, Festus. Accusations like that can ruin a man. So can betrayal," Lucius replied, his smile shone. "Enjoy the panthers, Titus. They're hungry tonight." As the dancers reached a crescendo, The panther handlers opened the cages, the beasts stalking forward on golden leashes, their eyes glinting with menace. The crowd's cheers drowned out all else, giving Lucius the cover he needed. Caius returned, slipping him the vial, a small glass container with a faint, bitter scent. Belladonna, again, the augure's work, orchestrated by Gallus through Titus. Lucius pocketed the vial, his mind set. The night was far from over, but he had turned the augure's betrayal into an advantage. With the guests distracted and Varro's seduction unfolding, he could focus on neutralizing Gallus's next move. The orgy was a battlefield, and Lucius Festus was its master strategist, weaving deception into triumph under Rome's starry sky. The triclinium of Senator Marcellus's villa was a whirlwind of decadence, the air thick with the scents of myrrh, roasted peacock, and a heady tang of Falernian wine. Lucius Festus stood at the heart of the orgy, his purple cloak a beacon amidst the revelry, his sharp eyes tracking every detail. The Alexandrian dancers had just concluded their procession through the gardens, Nefret's solo a triumph that had left the guests spellbound. The panthers, leashed and pacing under torchlight, had drawn gasps of awe, their golden eyes glinting with primal menace. Yet, beneath Lucius's composed exterior, tension simmered. The augure's betrayal, tied to Senator Rufus Gallus's plot to discredit Marcellus, had been confirmed by the intercepted vial of belladonna. Claudia's mission to sway Senator Varro was unfolding in a private chamber, and Drusius's hints of treason against the emperor loomed like a storm cloud. With the night's finale approaching, Lucius knew one misstep could unravel everything. Commotion at the villa's gates signaled the arrival of the second panther's cart, just in time for the planned spectacle. Lucius had instructed the handlers to parade both beasts through the gardens, a display of savage elegance. To cap the evening, he moved swiftly to the courtyard, where Decimus and Brutus oversaw the transfer of the panther from its cart to a reinforced cage. The beast, sleek and restless, growled as it was led out, its muscles rippling under its black coat. The handlers, sweating despite the cool night, secured its golden leash, but Lucius noticed their nervous glances. "Careful," he warned, his voice low. "This one's fresh from the Suburra. It's not used to crowds." The lead handler, a grizzled veteran named Cyrus, nodded. "It's skittish, but we've got it under control. Ready for the parade when you give the word." Lucius signaled Amelia, who was coordinating the wine service nearby. The finale's set. He told her, "Keep the guests in the gardens, and make sure Varro's chamber stays private. Any word from Caius?" Amelia's face was grim. "He's trailing the augur. Spotted them near the servants' quarters, whispering with another of Titus Flaccus's men. No new vials, but Caius thinks they're planning something for the finale." Lucius's jaw tightened. Titus, Gallus's likely pawn, was relentless. The intercepted belladonna vial suggested a second attempt at sabotage, and the augur's note, "The serpent strikes at midnight," hinted at a climactic move. With midnight past, the danger was imminent. "Tell Caius to stay on them," Lucius said, "and post extra guards around the panthers. If Gallus wants chaos, he'll get it, but on my term." As Amelia hurried off, Lucius returned to the gardens, where the guests were gathered, their targas and stolas glowing under the torchlight. Marcellus raised a goblet, his voice boomed. "To Rome, to pleasure, and to Lucius Festus, who makes the gods envious." The crowd cheered, but Lucius' eyes were on Titus, who lingered near Drusius, his smile too sharp for innocence. The panther parade began, the handlers leading the beasts through a path lined with roses and ivy. The crowd parted, their gasps mingling with the lyre's haunting notes. Nefret, now adorned in a golden veil, danced alongside, her movements mirroring the panther's grace. The first panther moved smoothly, its leash taut but secure. But as the second panther passed Lucius, a sudden crack split the air. The golden leash snapped, its clasp weakened from the Suburra's rough handling. The panther lunged, its roar shattering the night. Guests screamed,
scattering like leaves in a storm. A senator tripped over his toga, wine splashing across the roses, while a courtesan shrieked, her pearls scattering. The handlers scrambled, Cirrus shouting for nets, but the panther bounded toward the traclinium, its eyes wild. Lucius's heart pounded, but his mind was a blade, sharp and swift. Chaos was his canvas, and he would paint it into triumph. Phaedrus, he bellowed, spotting the choreographer. Get the dancers, form a circle. Nefret, lead them.
Nefret, quick to seize the moment, rallied the dancers, their veils swirling as they formed a living barrier, their movements hypnotic. The panther, startled by the sudden flurry of color, slowed, its ears twitching. Lucius grabbed a torch from a nearby stand, thrusting it toward the beast, its flames reflecting in its eyes. Cyrus, nets now, he shouted. The handlers, regaining their nerve, flung nets over the panther, pinning it as it snarled. Lucius stepped forward, his voice steady but commanding. Noble guests, he called, raising the torch. Behold the untamed spirit of the wild, tamed by Rome's might. This is no mere feast. It's a triumph over chaos itself. The crowd, initially panicked, erupted in cheers, their fear transformed into awe. Marcellus clapped, his laughter booming, while Claudia's eyes gleamed with approval. Even Drosius nodded, impressed. Lucius's gamble had paid off. The disaster was now a spectacle. The panther's roar, a symbol of his control. And the handlers secured the beast. Lucius caught sight of Caius, who slipped through the crowd, his face urgent. The augur, he whispered. They tried to slip another vial to a server, but I nabbed it. Titus was there, gave the order. Lucius pocketed the second vial, his suspicions confirmed. Titus, working for Gallus, had orchestrated the panther's escape, hoping to ruin the night. But Lucius had turned their sabotage into his victory. Stay on, Titus, he told Caius. If any moves, I want to know. The guests returned to the triclinium, their spirits high. The panther's roar, a tale they'd recount for years. Lucius glanced at Varro's chamber, where the Palmyran freedwoman emerged, her smile signaling success. Claudia's mission was complete, but Gallus's plot and the augur's role remained a threat. With the night at its peak, Lucius Festus stood tall, his triumph forged in chaos, ready to face the final battles in Rome's game of pleasure and power. The orgy in Senator Marcellus's villa had reached its zenith, a tapestry of excess woven from silk, wine, and primal roar. The triclinium glowed under the flicker of 100 lamps, their light dancing across the faces of Rome's elite, flushed with wine and wonder. Lucius Festus stood at the edge of the revelry, his purple cloak a symbol of his triumph. The panther's escape, a potential disaster, had been transformed into a spectacle that left the guests chanting his name. Nefret's dance had enchanted. Senator Varro's seduction by the Palmyran freedwoman had succeeded, confirmed by Claudia's discreet nod, and the poisoned wine had been thwarted, with Quintus Labeo recovering quiet. Yet, the augur's warning, a serpent lies among the roses, still coiled in Lucius's mind, its meaning sharpened by the intercepted vials of belladonna and Caius's reports of Titus Flaccus's treachery, orchestrated by Senator Rufus Gallus. As the guests reclined, sated and merry, Marcellus summoned Lucius to his side. The senator's broad face was ruddy with wine, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Lucius, he boomed, clapping a heavy hand on Lucius's shoulder. You've outdone yourself. The panthers, the dancers, the wine. Rome will speak of this night for years. Name your reward. Lucius bowed, his smile masking the calculations beneath. Your praise is reward enough, Senator,
but a few more contracts for your allies' feasts would ensure my art continues to shine. Marcellus laughed, his voice echoing, "Done, and a purse of ore to sweeten it. You've made me the envy of the Senate." Claudia, standing nearby, offered a subtle smile, her eyes conveying both gratitude and a warning. Lero, now back in the triclinium, was laughing with Marcellus's allies. His earlier resistance to the trade proposal seemingly softened. Her mission was a success, but Lucius knew her gratitude came with expectations. Drosius, the emperor's cousin, caught his eye from across the room, his nod a silent reminder of their earlier talk of treason. Lucius had promised to listen for whispers, but the night had yielded only Gallus's plot against Marcellus, not the emperor. The guests began to depart, their litters lining the villa's gates. Lucius slipped into the shadows of the garden to confer with Amelia. "The night's a triumph," he said, "but Titus and the augur are still loose ends. Any sign of them?" Amelia's face was taut. "Titus left early, claiming illness, likely to avoid questions about the server. Caius is still tracking the augur. He saw them slip into the servants' quarters with a cloaked figure. Possibly Gallus himself." Lucius's pulse quickened. Gallus's presence at the villa would confirm his role as the serpent, orchestrating the poisoning and the panther's escape to discredit Marcellus. But before he could respond, a rustle in the rose bushes drew his attention. A figure emerged, cloaked and hooded, their voice a low rasp, the same voice that had delivered the augur's warning in the Forum Boarium.
"Lucius Festus," the figure said, stepping into the torchlight. The hood fell back, revealing a woman with sharp features and eyes like polished obsidian. "You've danced well tonight, but every dance has its price." Lucius's hand hovered near his hidden dagger, his charm a shield. "The augur, I presume, or should I say Gallus's spy. Your warning was clever, but your vials of belladonna gave you away." The woman's lips curved, unperturbed. "Call me Livia, and yes, I serve Gallus, but not blindly. We've thwarted his plans tonight, but he's not finished, nor am I." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "I know your secrets, Festus, the debts you owe to the moneylenders in the Suburra, the favors you've traded with senators' wives. One word to Drusus, and your glittering world crumbles." Lucius's heart pounded, but he kept his face a mask. Nenio. His debts were a closely guarded secret, buried beneath his reputation as Rome's premier planner. Livia's knowledge was a blade at his throat, but he sensed an opportunity. "And what do you want, Livia? To ruin me, or to strike a deal?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Gallus wants Marcellus humiliated, but I want more. Power, wealth, a place at the table. Help me undermine Gallus, and I'll keep your secrets and deliver his to you." Lucius weighed her words. Betraying Gallus could neutralize the senator's threat, but aligning with Livia was a gamble, her loyalty as fickle as the Tiber's currents. "Prove your worth," he said. "Give me Gallus's next move, and I'll consider it." Livia's eyes gleamed. "He plans to accuse Marcellus of treason, using forged letters linking him to a Parthian envoy. The letters are hidden in his villa, to be discovered tomorrow. Act fast, Festus, or your triumph tonight will be dust by dawn." "Brief." She vanished into the shadows before Lucius could respond, leaving him with a choice: trust a serpent, or risk exposure. He summoned Caius, who appeared from the darkness, his matted hair damp with sweat. "New task," Lucius said, his voice low. "Find Gallus's villa, search for forged letters, anything tying Marcellus to Parthia, and keep Livia in sight." Caius nodded, slipping away as the last guests departed. Lucius returned to the triclinium, where Marcellus and Claudia were bidding farewell to Drusus. The emperor's cousin paused, his gaze locking onto Lucius. "A fine night, Festus," he said,
I'll expect your report on any whispers. Lucius bowed, his mind racing. The orgy was a success, but the price of pleasure was steep. Livia's threat, Gallus's plot, and Drusus's scrutiny were a noose tightening around him. Yet, Lucius Festus thrived in chaos. With dawn approaching, he would wield his cunning to protect his patron and himself, or pay the ultimate price in Rome's merciless arena. The first light of dawn crept over the 7 hills of Rome, casting a soft glow across Senator Marcellus's villa, now quiet after the orgy's fevered revelry. The triclinium, once alive with laughter and the clink of goblets, lay strewn with rose petals, spilled wine, and the remnants of a night that would echo in Rome's gossip for months. Lucius Festus stood in the atrium, his purple cloak slightly rumpled but his demeanor unshaken. The orgy had been a triumph, the Panther's escape turned into a spectacle. Senator Varro, swayed by Claudius Palmyron, freedwoman Quintus Labeius poisoning contained, and the augur's betrayal revealed as Livia, thwarted, at least for now. Yet, the costs of the night weighed heavily. Livia's threat to expose his debts and favors, Rufus Gallus's plot to frame Marcellus for treason, and Drusus' demand for whispers of conspiracy, left Lucius on a knife's edge. As slaves cleared the debris, sweeping away garlands and scrubbing wine stains, Lucius reviewed the night with Aemilia, his trusted freedwoman, who stood nearby, her wax tablet finally at rest. The guests left singing your praises, she said, her voice weary but proud. Marcellus is the talk of the Palatine, and Varro's vote for the trade routes is secure. But Titus Flaccus slipped away, and Caius hasn't returned from Gallus's villa. Lucius's jaw tightened. Caius, the young thief, had been sent to find the forged letters that Livia claimed would frame Marcellus for treason. His absence was troubling, but Lucius trusted the boy's cunning. Keep the villa gates watched, he told Aemilia. If Caius returns, bring him to me immediately, and send word to our contacts in the Subura. Find out if Titus is hiding. Before Aemilia could reply, a litter arrived at the villa's entrance, its gilded frame and armed escort unmistakable. Drusus, the emperor's cousin, stepped out, his toga pristine despite the late hour, his dark eyes glinting with purpose.
Lucius straightened, his charm a polished shield. Lord Drusus, he said, bowing. Polished shield. Lord Fleischt, he said, bowing. Trust the night met your expectations. Drusus's smile was thin but genuine. More than met. Festus, you turned chaos into legend. The emperor will hear of your skill and your discretion. He leaned closer, his voice low. I heard no whispers of treason, but your vigilance was noted. A man like you could go far if you choose your allies wisely. The words were both praise and warning, a reminder of Drusus's earlier request to report any conspiracies. Lucius inclined his head, careful not to commit. My allies are pleasure and perfection, my lord, but I'm always listening. Drusus nodded, satisfied, and handed Lucius a sealed scroll, a token of gratitude. The emperor's niece seeks a planner for her betrothal feast. Impress her, as you did tonight, and your name will reach the Palatine's highest halls. Lucius's heart leapt. A commission from the imperial family could elevate him beyond the Senate's squabbles, securing his place among Rome's untouchables. He tucked the scroll into his cloak, bowing again. I'm honored, my lord. The feast will be a triumph. As Drusus's litter departed, Marcellus approached, his broad frame still radiating triumph. Festus, you've made me a king tonight, he said, pressing a heavy purse of ori into Lucius's hand. Claudia tells me Varro's vote is ours, and my rivals are green with envy. Name another reward land, perhaps, or a share in the trade routes. Lucius smiled, his mind already on Gallus's threat. Your generosity is enough.
Senate, but a word in the Senate to keep Rufus Gallus's ambitions in check would serve us both. Marcellus's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. Gallus has been too bold. I'll see to it. As Marcellus returned to his villa, Lucius stepped into the garden, where the panthers' cages stood empty. The beasts returned to their handlers. The roses, trampled in the night's chaos, seemed to mock the augur's warning. A serpent lies among the roses. Livia's revelation of his debts and favors was a blade yet to fall, and Gallus's forged letters could still ruin Marcellus if Caius failed to retrieve them. A rustle in the shadows snapped Lucius from his thoughts. Caius emerged, his matted hair streaked with dust, a bundle of scrolls clutched in his hands. Got 'em, he panted, his grin fierce. Gallus's villa was a maze, but I found the letters forged. Just like Livia said, they link Marcellus to a Parthian envoy, signed with his seal. Gallus planned to present them to the Senate at dawn. Lucius took the scrolls, his relief tempered by caution, and Livia, Caius's grin faded, gone, slipped out of Gallus's villa before I could follow. She's a ghost. Lucius cursed inwardly. Livia's knowledge of his secrets made her a lingering threat, but the letters were a victory. He burned them in a nearby brazier, watching the flames consume Gallus's plot. Good work, Caius, he said, tossing the boy another purse. Stick with me, and you'll rise higher than the Sabor. As Caius vanished into the dawn, Lucius stood alone, the weight of the night settling over him. The orgy had been a triumph, earning him Marcellus's reward, Drusus's favor, and a new commission. But the costs were steep. Livia's threat, Gallus's enmity, and the ever-present risk of imperial scrutiny. Rome was a city of serpents, and Lucius Festus had danced among them, weaving chaos into glory. As the sun rose, he adjusted his cloak, his mind already turning to the next feast, the next battle. In the eternal city, pleasure was power, and Lucius was ready for his next adventure, or the ruin it might bring.